"You are not less," he whispered to her. "Never let anyone tell you otherwise." His daughter gasped. To her, this was unthinkable. Her father had always been her shield, her accomplice, the one who turned away from her small cruelties. But not tonight. Tonight he had drawn a line. The janitor, still holding his trembling child, could barely breathe. He had lived a life of silence, swallowing humiliation day after day, watching his little girl endure stares, whispers, and rejection. But now the most powerful man he served was speaking truth for the world to hear. The millionaire stood again, his presence towering, his voice shaking the air. "In this house, cruelty ends. From this night forward, respect will not be bought with wealth. It will be earned." The chandelier flickered as though bowing to the declaration. The walls themselves seemed to echo his words. And with that, the millionaire turned to his staff, his board, his empire, not as a ruler of wealth, but as a man of justice. What happened next would spread far beyond these walls, rewriting not just his legacy, but his very soul. The air in the grand mansion felt like fire and ice, burning with tension, yet frozen in disbelief. The millionaire's words still lingered sharp as blades, cutting through pride and privilege alike. His daughter stood motionless, her lips trembling, her face pale. For the first time in her life, she wasn't untouchable. But this wasn't only about her. This moment was about something far greater. The janitor, his 35 years carved into weary muscles and scarred hands, still clutched his 6-year-old daughter. Her tiny fingers dug into his sleeve, her wide eyes darting between the two most powerful figures in the room, her father and the man who ruled empires. And then it happened. The millionaire turned back to the janitor and his daughter. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into his pocket. But instead of pulling out money, a check, a card, something shallow and expected, he pulled out a key, a small golden key that shimmered under the chandelier. Whispers broke out. The staff leaned forward. His daughter's jaw dropped. The millionaire placed the key into the janitor's hand, closing his calloused fingers around it. "This isn't charity," the millionaire said, his voice steady, resonant. "This is recognition. Too long have I ignored the truth, that greatness is not measured by wealth, but by the values we live by. Your daughter reminded me of something I had forgotten, and I will not let that lesson fade." The janitor's breath caught. He looked down at the key, confusion flooding his tired eyes. "Sir, what is this?" The millionaire stepped closer, his gaze unflinching. "A home, a new start. A chance for your child to rise without fear, without shame. She will not grow up believing she is less, because she is not." The room gasped. Even the walls seemed to tremble at the revelation. The world stood still that day, when wealth and pride collided with innocence and truth. The millionaire's daughter kicked the black. Janitor's daughter, what he did next, shocked everyone. It began with silence. A mansion glowing with luxury, marble floors that gleamed like glass, and chandeliers that rained down golden light. To most, this was paradise. But behind the polished walls lived secrets darker than shadows. The millionaire, 35 years old, sharp suit pressed to perfection, a man feared and respected in equal measure, was supposed to be gone late into the night. He was a titan of business, a ruler of boardrooms, a master of time. Yet fate had other plans. That evening, his meeting ended early. His car rolled through iron gates earlier than anyone expected. Inside the house, the janitor's daughter, just 6 years old, her head shaved bald from childhood illness, small frame wrapped in second-hand clothes too big for her tiny shoulders, was quietly playing in the corner. She had nothing but kindness in her heart, her little hands clutching a worn-out toy her father had salvaged from the trash. But not everyone saw her innocence. Across the hall stood the millionaire's own daughter, the child of privilege, polished shoes tapping against the floor, expensive dress swaying as she moved. Entitlement burned in her eyes, and in that entitled fire, cruelty sparked. She shoved. She mocked. And then, in one heart-stopping instant, she raised her foot and kicked the janitor's daughter to the ground. The small girl gasped, clutching her toy, her dark eyes wide with pain and confusion. She did not fight back. She never would. She only looked up, silent tears spilling, her lips trembling, as though asking a question she could not put into words. Why? The millionaire's daughter laughed, a sound that cut through the house like broken glass. To her, it was nothing more than a game she thought no one would ever see. But she was wrong. Because at that very moment, the front door opened. The sound of leather shoes echoed against marble. A voice, low and steady, carried through the hall. The millionaire had come home early. His sharp eyes scanned the scene before him. His daughter standing tall, smug and proud, and the janitor's little girl, crumpled on the floor, fighting back sobs. For a heartbeat, the world froze. The wealthy titan of industry was staring not at numbers, not at contracts, not at empires, but at a truth he was never meant to see. Shock rippled across his face, but it wasn't the kind his daughter expected. There was no indulgent smile, no blind defense of her cruelty. Instead, his jaw tightened. His eyes hardened. The millionaire had everything: power, wealth, prestige. But in that moment, he realized what he might lose forever if he did nothing: his humanity. And with a voice that thundered like judgment itself, he called out his daughter's name, and the world would remember. The night cruelty was silenced. By the courage of a janitor's daughter, the air in the mansion felt heavy, as if even the golden chandeliers held their breath. The millionaire's voice had thundered, cutting through the cruelty like lightning through a storm. His daughter froze mid-smirk, her polished shoes no longer tapping, her gaze flickering with sudden fear. Never before had she seen her father look at her this way. This wasn't the face of a man admiring his heir. This wasn't the smile of indulgence she had grown used to. No, this was something else. Something colder, heavier. The weight of truth. The janitor, a man of 35 years with calloused hands and weary shoulders, stepped into the hall from the shadows. His uniform was wrinkled, his boots scuffed, his face lined with years of labor, but his eyes burned with a fire no riches could match. He rushed toward his daughter, kneeling down to lift her from the marble floor. She clung to him silently, her small body trembling, her toy still in her grip like a shield. He looked up at the millionaire, expecting to be dismissed, maybe even blamed. After all, the world had taught him that wealth protects wealth, while men like him remain invisible. He braced himself for the inevitable, a defense of cruelty, a punishment for daring to exist in their world. But then, something impossible happened. The millionaire didn't look at the janitor with disgust. He didn't wave him away. Instead, he turned, slowly, deliberately, to face his own daughter. The silence deepened. You could hear the faint hum of the chandelier, the nervous breaths of servants hiding behind corners, the pounding heartbeat of a man about to make a choice that would echo forever. "Do you think your name makes you untouchable?" the millionaire said, his voice sharp as steel. His daughter's lips parted, but no words came out. "You think money gives you the right to hurt?" he continued, each word colder, firmer, until the room itself felt like stone. His daughter looked away, guilt seeping into her arrogance. But her father's voice pulled her back like chains. "You are my child," he said, "but this girl—" He motioned toward the janitor's daughter, still clutching her toy in silence. "She has more honor in her tears than you do in your laughter." Gasps spread through the hall. The staff exchanged shocked looks. The millionaire, the man who ruled empires, who never bent, never bowed, was humbling his own blood. The janitor's daughter wiped her eyes, confusion clouding her little face. She couldn't understand the storm raging above her, but she could feel the shift. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. The millionaire crouched down, lowering himself to her eye level. His expensive suit brushed against the cold marble, his polished shoes creaking as he knelt before a child born into poverty. And in that gesture, the entire mansion quaked. The millionaire's daughter dropped her toy, the sound echoing like thunder. "Father, you can't!" she cried, desperation breaking through her arrogance. She's just... Just what?" the millionaire roared, his voice a storm that silenced every corner of the mansion. His stare bore into her, stripping away the last of her entitlement. "Say it. Say what you've been taught to believe. That she is less because she is the janitor's daughter? Because she does not dine from silver plates? Because her shoes are not polished?" Tears welled in his daughter's eyes, her voice choking in her throat. She could not answer. The truth was too heavy. The millionaire turned away from her, looking back at the janitor's daughter, who now peeked from her father's embrace, clutching her broken toy. He knelt once more, lowering himself from the height of his power to meet the innocence of a child. "Little one," he whispered, "you have shown me something my empire never could. Kindness, strength, dignity. For that, I owe you everything." The girl blinked, uncertain, but in her silence there was power. The staff began to applaud softly, hesitant at first, then stronger, a tide of respect filling the hall. The sound rose higher, echoing against marble and glass, until the mansion itself seemed to sing. The janitor's chest heaved with emotion. He had scrubbed these floors for years, unseen, unvalued. But now, in this single night, his daughter had rewritten destiny itself. The millionaire stood tall once more, his voice booming. "Let this night be remembered. Wealth does not define greatness, character does. And the smallest hands can carry the greatest power." The applause thundered. The chandelier shook. And outside the mansion, the world would soon learn of the story that humbled power, exalted humility, and changed a legacy forever. The millionaire's daughter turned away, tears streaming, her arrogance broken. The janitor held his child tight, knowing her life would never be the same. And the world would remember. The night cruelty was silenced by the courage of a janitor's daughter.